sets me free. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. When you hold me, I know that I have everything. It's blue skies and big dreams, a billion places to explore. And I will be with you forever. Forever I am yours. Forever I am yours. They say the time is now to go where we want to. Follow the road until it leads us somewhere new. Nothing can stop us now. And we're together. Oh, the whole world opens up when I'm with you. In you I find a love that sets me free. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. When you hold me, I know that I have everything. It's blue skies, big dreams, a billion places to explore. And I will be with you forever. Forever I am yours. Forever I am yours. In you I found the love that sets me free. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. When you hold me, I know that I have everything. It's blue skies and big dreams, a billion places to explore. And I will be with you forever. Forever I am yours. Forever I am yours. Forever I am yours. Forever I am
I'm spending money like I just got paid. $100 bills, tell them keep the change. Come on. Yeah, pop a bottle, about to make it rain. Let me give you something now to celebrate. Come on. And if you're wondering why I move the way I do, I just feel so good, good, good. Oh, 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 I just feel so good. I see the world through my thrift store shades, rose-colored lenses and a fake gold frame. Come on. Playing old rock songs on an air guitar, posing for your picture like a superstar. Yeah, come on. And if you're wondering why I move the way I do, I just feel so good, good, good. Oh, 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 I just feel so good. If you feel it, just dance along. Keep the feeling going on and on. If If you feel it, just dance along, dance along, dance along. Yeah. If you feel it, just dance along. Got to keep the feeling going on and on. Yeah. If you feel it, just dance along, dance along. Oh, it just feels so good. I just feel so good, good, good. Oh, 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 I just feel so good. Oh, I just feel so good. Eyes on me, dripping sweat won't stop me till I'm dead. Mouth money, place your bets, blood rushing to my head. I won't run, I won't hide, I'm right here. You're gonna know my name. Show up or show out, 'cause sure enough, you're gonna know my name. Tongue slapping out your mouth won't save you. The truth comes out, I'll make it. Swallow it down, you can't fake it. It's too late now. I won't run, I won't hide, I'm right here. You're gonna know my name. Show up or show out, 'cause sure enough, you're gonna know my name. I won't run, I won't hide, I'm right here. You're gonna know my name. Show up or show out, 'cause sure enough, you're gonna know my name. I won't run, I won't hide, I'm right here. You're gonna know my name. Show up or show out, 'cause sure enough, you're gonna know my name. You're gonna know my name. You're gonna know my name.
Do you remember when we were young? Life was so simple and we just had fun. Do you remember when we were small? And everything around us was so much taller. Do you remember when we were younger?
Hello and welcome to the first ever TRMarketplace Digital Conference and Networking Forum. I'm Charlotte Turner, Editorial Director at TR Business Magazine, and today I will be co-moderating with my esteemed colleague Michael Barrett, who is Head of Events and Corporate Social Responsibility, and you'll hear from him in just a few moments. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us here today. I think just by being here, you are joining a movement which would genuinely help accelerate the industry's recovery. Now, in terms of a recovery, I think we can all agree that we've seen some glimpses of light, but we're not at the end of the tunnel yet, unfortunately. And this is why TRMarketplace was created in the first place, to genuinely support the industry at a time when, unfortunately, and many have described it as being on its knees at the very worst. But we believe that through this platform, which will be open for a further 6 months after this week has concluded in a brand hub showcase and chat capacity function, we can help it to adapt, not only to adapt and survive, but continue to thrive in the future. Now, we hope you've all had a chance to check out the platform so far. As you know, we've had it open for a full month since the 28th of August to all fully registered delegates. So you can get a chance to book in your meetings and add webinar sessions to your calendar and whatnot. I've personally been making new connections and meeting with some old friends and booking some meetings. On those functions, I believe that Michael wanted to add some points at this point.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, wherever you're tuning in from. Well, we're finally here. After months of preparation, it's great to welcome you all to the live TR Marketplace event. A little housekeeping before we move on. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind visitors to check your notifications. It's a bell icon at the top right-hand corner of your screen on the TR Marketplace platform to check if you have any incoming meeting requests from our Brand Hub partners. Without investment from these very forward-thinking companies, we would be unable to provide such a fantastic program of research and data-rich webinars. So please support these brands by engaging with them as much as possible throughout the week. So we've got an intensive program of research and data-rich webinars throughout the week, and it's my job and that of my colleague, Charlotte Turner, and our panel of distinguished speakers here today to kick off our unrivaled knowledge and insights program, which consists of 20 different sessions throughout the week on an extensive range of topics, all broadcast to you live, so you can enjoy the live commentary and interact with all the speakers who will respond to your questions live and in real time. Please note that you're welcome and encouraged to send in your questions to our speakers in this and all sessions using the Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen. Information on all our sessions can be found on the travelretailmarketplace.com platform. Please do sign up to these sessions ahead of time so they can be synchronized with your calendars. You can add sessions to your calendars by clicking on any session and then on the plus My Schedule button, then press Join Session just before each one starts. And trust me, you will not want to miss out. However, if you happen to be in a meeting at the time of the webinar that you do wish to attend, remember that all fully registered delegates can watch sessions at a later time or date, as all of them will be recorded and can be accessed exclusively on the Travel Retail Marketplace platform. And finally, before I hand back to Charlotte, please do not miss the 2020 Travel Retail Awards ceremony, which takes place at 11 o'clock UK time tomorrow, Tuesday, 29th of September. That's 11 o'clock UTC +1, when we will announce the winners of the industry's only consumer voted awards, and of course, hold the charity raffle draw, where we have some amazing prizes to be won. Tickets are still on sale right up to the award ceremony. Just go to travelretailawards.com/donate to find out more about the amazing charity the funds raised will benefit and to purchase your tickets. Thanks. Back to you, Charlotte.
Thanks, Michael. I want to draw your attention to today's session and what we'll be discussing over the next 90 minutes or so. The title of this session is Embracing and Leading Through Change, which I think we can all agree could not be more apt at this moment in time. This morning and indeed throughout the week, we hope to inspire all stakeholders with some new ideas and new ways of dealing with things that will help us all overcome the new challenges we face and offer at the same time some realistic perspectives on how to lead a workforce through an unprecedented period of uncertainty. Today, our guest speakers will discuss changing consumer behaviour, the irreversible new global travel retail landscape, and the evolution which businesses across the sector will need to embrace in order to adapt and survive both through and after the global pandemic. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers here today, or actually rather let them introduce themselves to you actually this time round. So if I could go to Tanya first, can you tell our viewers who you are and a little bit more about what you do?
Good morning to you all. Well, in this strange era we're working and living in, my introduction will be more for my private life. We're going into business later on. I'm a mother of 4 daughters. I live in the Netherlands, working at Schiphol Airport, but love to do some sailing and going out when possible. And working in this beautiful aviation industry for the last 5 years, and well, looking forward to exchange ideas and information in this coming days in the TRMarketplace, because I think only when we work together we can beat this well, strange times.
Thank you, Tanya. And Ramesh, over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Michael. It's fantastic to be here this morning or afternoon in Dubai. My name is Ramesh Kidambi. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Dubai Duty Free, and I report to Mr. McLaughlin, who's the Executive Vice Chairman and the CEO of the company. I've been with Dubai Duty Free for many years, too many years to count at the moment, I think. And I've been in this business for over 3 decades. Myself and my wife, Alpana, we live in Dubai. Our children are in the US. And I just found out a second ago that both Tanya and I have the same passion for sailing. So if you're ever in Dubai, Tanya, we'll take you out on Dubai waters. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Ramesh. And finally, Simon.
Hi folks, nice to meet you all. Simon Kemp. I run a management advisory service called Kepios that helps people all over the world to make sense of what people are really doing on the internet. Hopefully I'll get to share some of those secrets with you today. Based in Singapore, so already nice evening sunshine over here, nice and warm. Sorry for those in Europe where it's getting into autumn, but I'm just going to gloat for the start. I'm looking forward to sharing some great stories and insights with you today, and thanks to all the great organisation that's gone into preparing today.
Thank you very much, Simon. Appreciate that. So what we'll be doing today is I'd actually like to kick off the session by getting a little bit of context, actually. And what I mean by that is gaining more of an understanding of what's going on in your respective businesses, actually. I think that's really important to see how far we've come since the outbreak began and where we are now and how that's all evolved. So Tanya, could I ask you first how Schiphol has been impacted thus far in 2020 by the coronavirus, and what sort of evolution you've seen up until this point, and what you've had to do in order to get to this point?
Yes, well, we put on some slides. Hopefully it works, because that's also something I think everybody encounters once in a while to, well, hopefully we have it in the screen. Can even get it this bigger, but hopefully it's okay for everybody. Well, impact of COVID-19. I think it's unluckily the same figures for most airports and companies working in the aviation industry. In the first 6 months in 2020, we saw a severe drop, and also in the second half going forward, if you look at all the orange areas, which are again increasing, we don't think that we will end up on a higher level than the well, at least 30% of our business compared to last year. So the passengers numbers really dropped dramatically. Also, of course, in line with those passengers numbers, we have a commercial revenue drop, less than the passenger numbers, but still a high drop. So we are lucky that we never had to close our airport down. We had a smaller airport for a few months, but still we are open, and today we are totally open. But to different people, we have a different, actually a changed passenger profile with a higher number of people from the UK, China, Russia, which well leads to the fact that we have a higher spend per pax, almost 20% higher than last year. But on general, we have of course a lower revenue. So on the next slides, we have some more deep dive on the passenger profile, which is, which, as you can see, we have a higher percentage of young travelers. We have some changes in country of residence, but the most things, of course, like everybody sees, is the fact that we have less business travel. Although what we do see is that our VIP and our premium center, which is normal catering for our business travelers, is now increasing because of the fact that families also want to travel via the VIP services, being more away from the rest of the crowds. And of course, our leisure travelers change their behavior, and they are, of course, more looking for they're changing their focus, actually, like in the Maslow pyramid, as you see in this slide, where we were all the last years talking about, well, the more experienced, highest inspiring part of the Maslow pyramid. We are all know that we are down at the bottom again and looking for health and safety. So that's what we cater for our passengers. We make sure that they feel at ease, they feel welcome, but with all the things in place to make sure they feel safe and sound. And then, of course, it's important to also look for the inspiration, because each and every passenger still is, of course, wants to have the experience when they're traveling. So if we look at the safe and seamless, we did a lot of things. We did sensitizing zones. We had, of course, all the measures being in place for social distancing. We have a lot of measures in each and every corner. And of course, a lot of communication towards our passengers on how we try to give them a safe and health journey, and how they could walk and go through our airport without well, feeling unsafe, and along that journey, of course, make sure that they still find all the beautiful shops and outlets and food and beverage areas and all the services we have available for them. So that's also, of course, together with our business partners, we put a lot of effort in all kind of innovations, and I thank all our business partners, Schiphol Airport, all with the corporation on this one. We have in a few weeks, we already had vending machines. We launched the QR code for our passengers you can order remote. We have a lot of online co-creation with our customers to know what they're heading, and we opened a new express lounge. So all kinds of stuff, and of course, if you see, we have piloted the pre-order retail system. So for every passengers, it's possible to have a seamless remote journey, which helps them go forward and feel safe. So that's the things we're doing at Schiphol Airport, and well, very curious on all the other areas of business lines.
Sorry, thank you very much, Tanya, for that. That was a great, concise kind of introduction to how Schiphol is dealing with the impacts of coronavirus. Ramesh, I'd like to come to you next in a similar vein of questioning. We were delighted to have you on a previous TL Connect webinar earlier this year, where you were able to go into some detail about how Dubai Duty Free was preparing itself, or was dealing with this kind of first phase. And even then, we talked about how this might have to evolve for second phases, third phases, etc. And you had done an extraordinary job to reopen the airport, parts of the airport in certain capacity. Can you tell us how things have progressed since the last time we talked on the TL Connect webinar earlier this year?
Yeah, sure, Charlotte. No, it was a coincidence that we had come on TR Business Connect just literally the day before we reopened the shops on the 2nd of June, and we opened the shops on the 3rd of June. And I'll show you just very quickly a couple of slides of what we had done at that time. We had looked at all of our retail areas. We had figured out the capacity of each shop, taking into account the social distancing measures. We had marked clear entry and exit points, for the retail areas. We had put in all the measures in terms of hygiene and in terms of social distancing, and we did all the operational modifications that we needed. And the result of it was that we implemented all those changes in our retail areas. And an example of it is here. And another example in Terminal 2. And we opened for business on the 3rd of June earlier this year, with the new protocols in place, for social distancing. And after we reopened the shops, I'll just very quickly go over what happened in terms of passenger statistics. And as you can see, from this figure and following on from what Tanya was saying, the drop in the passenger numbers was catastrophic, in the first few months. And the numbers are sort of starting to come back. We had about 800,000 passengers last month. This year, we'll probably do close to 1 million passengers. And our retail business, just in our two concourses, in Terminal 2 and in Concourse B, has started to climb. So these are the figures in US dollars for June, July, August, and September till day before yesterday. And you can see the graph, we went from $57,000 in Concourse B to $861,000, on an average per day. And what is important for us is that the growth in the business has been quite good for the passenger numbers that we have. We are doing better in terms of sales growth than the passenger numbers alone would indicate. And in terms of airlines, we have Emirates continuing to be the major share, in terms of our business, nearly 63%, and which is sort of similar to what it was last year. And then you see some other airlines, because in Concourse B, currently Emirates is operating there and other airlines are operating in Concourse B. So you get some share of the other airlines business. And if you look at the same thing by category, we see, and by region, sorry, we see that the main difference between now and last year is that the Far Eastern business has obviously dropped, significantly. The Indian subcontinent has gained a bit of market share, but overall, the sort of the regional mix is a bit comparable. The main region, which is a positive story and it is doing very well, is Russia. So when we compare the difference in our business to what it was last year, we see that the drop in the business with Russia has been the least. So for example, Australasia, the drop is like 97, 98%. Far East is 90%, but in the case of Russia, the drop is only around 55%. So the regional mix has kept sort of around the same. And the last thing that I want to mention to you is that when we look at it by category, we see again that some categories, when we look at it company-wide, like a millionaire and finance surprise promotion, that category gained market share over other categories, but by and large, perfumes, cosmetics, tobacco, technology, all those categories, pretty much retained their share, or they were within a couple of percentage points of what they were before. So there has not been a huge difference, and the only big difference really has been in millionaire. If I strip out the online business and if I strip out millionaire, and I just look at the category sales in Concourse B alone, just pure physical retail without the effect of promotions like millionaire, again you see the same picture, that the major categories like perfumes, watches, and so on have retained their share. Confectionery grew a little bit, and that was partly because of the fact that we had a lot of repatriation flights, especially to the Indian subcontinent, and therefore, we had demand in terms of confectionery and a couple of categories like that. So we are pleased that the structure in terms of the retail business, whether we look at it in terms of regions, whether we look at it in terms of airlines, whether we look at it in terms of categories, has pretty much been stable and fairly predictable. And the business has actually done better than what the passenger numbers alone would have showed us. So one of the things that we look at is what we call penetration, the number of customers whom we convert into shoppers, and out of the total number of passengers that we have. And then when we look at the penetration side, we actually find that in Concourse B, the penetration was actually much better. It is 20% better than what it was last year. And in Terminal 2, it has been pretty much flat. And if you add both of them, of course, then the penetration is higher. That for us has been extremely encouraging. When we reopened the shops in June, and prior to June, a lot of the commentary and a lot of concern was, will people shop in airports? Will they go to the duty free? Will they buy products like perfumes and cosmetics, where there is more interaction involved? And we are happy to say that many of those anxieties have been assuaged in the last 3 or 4 months. The passengers are continuing to shop, and they're in fact spending more now than they were spending before. And not only is the penetration been up, but also another metric that we have, which is spend per passenger. In that metric also, we find higher spend per passenger now than it was. Now, I want to, one thing that I would say as a caveat would be that we are looking at a relatively small number of passengers. We are looking at 800, 900,000 passengers a month, as opposed to 8 million. So it is a smaller sample size, but in that smaller sample size, the spend per passenger has been higher than what it was in previous years. And so the better penetration, better spend per passenger, and a more predictable business across categories, these three things I think are very positive for the travel retail business in general. That in spite of all the events that have happened, in spite of the continuous negative news flow, in spite of the economic crisis, in spite of massive unemployment in many markets, we are continuing to do reasonably well in a relative sense when we look at penetration and spend per passenger. The absolute numbers are of course much lower, and we'll finish the year probably 65% lower than last year. But this gives us more optimism in terms of the future. So that was a very quick glimpse, Charlotte and Michael, at where Dubai Duty Free is at 4 months after reopening on the 3rd of June.
Thank you very much for that, Ramesh. You mentioned a few things that I'd like to pick up on with Tanya. Actually, in numerous conversations TR Business has been having with the leading global operators in the last few months ahead of its top 10 international operators report, we've been discussing with them how spend patterns have changed, and obviously all of them are reporting that their customer demographics have altered slightly, as you've mentioned, and has Tanya actually, but that the average spend per pax across the board so far has seemed to be higher than it was previously. As you mentioned, I think maybe up to 20%. I'm not sure if it was yourself or Tanya. In the case of some other operators I've been speaking to in the last few months, that's also been the case. And interestingly, you say penetration level is also increase. Now, I guess the real trick is trying to maintain those levels when all the passengers come back, which we know obviously is unlikely to be the case. But again, I think we can all, what you'll be trying to do, and Tanya is trying to learn what has brought these things about at this moment in time. Is it purely just the passenger mix, or is there something more to it? Now, Tanya, I wanted to come to you and talk about how you're kind of adapting to the changing consumer profile at the airport in terms of the retail, and if you're able to do anything obviously extraordinary at this point in time when obviously animations are perhaps restricted in some areas, and obviously you have to put all the safety and sanitizing measures in place too. So working with those parameters, how are you adapting to the changing consumer profile?
Well, I think the fact that we have less passengers and the passengers who are traveling are looking for more comfort and more attention and more service, actually, comes hand in hand, because we do have the possibility at the moment to almost, unluckily maybe, but we almost get personalized service to everybody coming to our airport, because we still have a lot of people working in our shops. Every shop is open almost, so we can provide the right service and we can help our passengers going forward. So actually, what would be the best way forward is to have that personalized service also in the future. And we all know that's not possible in the way we do it today. And maybe it's not totally needed as well, but we also looking into the online possibilities to a sort of, create the same atmosphere, create the same personalized services when we are increasing a number of packs. And hopefully that will be soon. So we can still have that personal touch, that personal way of servicing our passengers every day as we do today. And I think that's why it's going hand in hand, and that's why it's there. And also, of course, the spend at the moment is because of the fact that the passengers who are all flying are also, lucky they're flying, so they want to buy something, but also a lot of passengers having intercontinental flights, which are more willing to bring things home from the Netherlands. So that's also, of course, driving the spend.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tanya. And Ramesh, the same for you. I mean, I know there's been a lot of measures that you've put in place, obviously, to reduce the spread and the risk, and you've done your utmost. But are you able to actually take advantage of, as Tanya said, almost giving passengers more of a personalised service and more attention at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been able to do it because the passenger numbers have been lower. And I'll give you an example. If we take a shop, such as if we take a shop such as perfumes and cosmetics area, where you have a lot of your brand ambassadors and you have other staff. We had recently done a study, and I'll just very quickly show you a couple of slides from it. And we had done a study where we looked at the shop and seen how many people we can have in the shop and how many staff we have in the shop. So if you take this location, for example, which is of a big perfumes and cosmetics shop, we can have 68 people in the shop, and we have about 23 staff there. So you have a high sort of ratio in terms of the number of people that you can have there. And when we looked at this particular shop during the peak period, when we had about 23 flights go out, and we found that the one-on-one interactions between the customers and between the sales staff was very high, simply because the number of customers in the shop were low relative to the number of staff. So if I show you this graph, for example, when we looked at it between 7:30 and 8:30 on that morning, the blue lines that you see are the number of staff in the shop, and the other lines that you see are the number of customers. But this kind of, let's say, ratio, between staff and customers will be very hard to keep in the future. So currently, as per this graph, you have a situation where during that peak period, every hour we had more staff in the shop than we had customers, brand ambassadors and our normal sales staff. And to come back to what Tanya was saying, as the number of passengers increases, then this kind of a situation would be much harder to maintain. And because you have such high staffing levels now, relative to the number of people coming into your shops, we are also having a relatively high, conversion rate. Nearly 50% of the passengers who come into the shop, we are able to convert them into customers, which is pretty high. So I think for the future, we'll have to think about how this evolves. We'll have to really think about social distancing, and will the number of passengers increase with the social distancing measures in place? And if the number of passengers increases and the social distancing remains in place, I think it will be very challenging, from a capacity point of view, from a safety point of view, and from a service point of view. But currently, the situation looks good because the passenger numbers are relatively small. And some of the things, Charlotte, that we did, as a passenger service, for example, in the previous presentation, I talked about the concierge service, where you have somebody, there to go into the shop and pick up an item for a passenger and bring it. Those kinds of services, even though we introduced it, it didn't have any uptake. Passengers prefer to just go and shop on their own, pick what they want, pay for it, and come out of the shop. So some of the personal interactions that we thought will work, it didn't really have an uptake. But overall, I think at the current levels of passenger flow, the interactivity is very high between the staff and between our customers.
Sorry, Tanya, I just wanted to go to you on that. Do you concur with what Ramesh says about how if social distancing measures remain the same, and obviously we want travellers to come in there in bigger volumes, how will you then manage the service and the staff in stores at that point?
Well, I think that the digital possibilities helps us there. I think that if we can show our passengers which route to take and where it's crowded in our airport, but also have, we invest a lot of money into the online possibilities to see when it's crowded, when to come to the airport, but also have a sort of real-time possibility and fast tracking. So all kind of digital possibilities we are developing in a much, well, we already were investing in it, but it's in a much quicker pace to make sure that we, well, can provide the most of the same services going forward and have more people in our airport. But in the end, I think that we won't be able to manage the 1.5 meter or 2.5 meters distancing together with all the people we normally need to operate our airport on a level which also is a lot of sort of business case for our business partners, for us as an airport. So it will always be a balancing act, and it will never be ideal until we have a medicine for COVID-19, I think.
So I think we can all agree that the social distancing measures will provide even more challenges for the travel retail environment going forward in the next few months, especially when it comes to second phases and third phases of this pandemic. We just obviously are unclear at this stage as to how many phases there will be, obviously. But Tanya, you brought me beautifully into a segue to introduce Simon back into the conversation since the beginning about the digital possibilities, and you're talking obviously about solutions for the airport practically in terms of flow and alerting passengers to when there's more congested times, etc. But obviously the opportunities exist very much for
also for retail, and of course.
Exactly. So Simon, I'd love to bring you into the conversation now because I know you have so much to share. In terms of, I'd like to just start with a more general question about how you see global internet usage and social media usage and how that's kind of changed and evolved since the outbreak of COVID. If you could sort of paint a kind of picture, a wider perspective, that would be great to start us off.
Sure. So I think what's been really evident is that digital has been kind of the thing that's got most people through lockdown. In particular, over the last few months, we've seen a significant rise in the number of people that are spending lots of time on various different digital activities, whether it's on mobile devices, whether it's on tablets, whether they're on social media, you name it. They've been spending a lot more time doing a lot more things digitally. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to share a couple of slides at this point. I'm going to just set this up 1 second. So hopefully you can see there that we've got some very big numbers when it comes to digital around the world at the moment. So we're looking at roughly 60% of the world's total population already using the internet. That is still going up, but as you can imagine, an awful lot of this data is actually still collected manually. You can't ask people if they don't use the internet through the internet. So we have to do classical face-to-face surveys to keep track of digital. And in the current situation, that's quite difficult. So these numbers are actually a little bit older, but still showing some really good sort of high figures there. 60% use of the internet around the world, and more than 50% now people using social media as well. If I just take you into the growth numbers that we've seen over the last 12 months now, what's really interesting, the social media numbers here are super up to date. So that was based on use in July 2020. And we're seeing their double-digit growth year on year. So huge amounts of increase in terms of the number of people that are using digital devices. You can see more than 1 million people a day starting to use social media. Just absolutely crazy. During the course of our 90 minutes of conversation today, we're going to see more than 50,000 people start to use social media for the very first time. Just incredible, right? Mind-blowing numbers. And we're spending a huge amount of time, 40% of our waking life spent on the internet. If you are using the internet already, so more than 6.5 hours every day doing various different connected things. But I would like to stress that that does include a portion of the watching television time in there. So if you're one of the many people that spent a lot more time watching things like Netflix or Disney Plus in recent weeks, that does actually contribute to part of your internet time and to the television time that you see there. But as you can see, already twice as much time using the internet as watching TV. So that'll give you a little bit of perspective, hopefully, to kick off the conversation on where digital's at the moment. But the key takeaway here, already lots of people and growth still really impressive as well.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, indeed, the sort of plus 10% usage, new social media users, the active social media users, again, is particularly interesting to me. And also in general, the sort of, I understand that, that older consumers are really adapting to the sort of new lockdown measures, and they're also logging on a lot more nowadays. And I think that's indicative, and we can use that information, obviously, for retailers can use that information for how to attract and target them with various marketing activities. And again, with this sort of social media use, I'd like to again bring in Ramesh. I mean, how is Dubai Duty Free kind of really tapping into all these new users that are out there? How are you able to contact them, communicate with them at this time, and has that kind of changed and increased since the global outbreak?
Thanks, Simon, for telling us about the growth in media. It's absolutely astounding. And Charlotte, to come back to what Dubai Duty Free has been doing, fortunately for us, we had started a couple of years ago a plan to improve our web presence, to improve our customer engagement, to improve our e-commerce platform, and to build up a database of our customers. So all of those things that we did in the last couple of years helped us, when the pandemic started. And one of the things that we did very quickly in a space of, about 4 weeks, and I just share the screen again to just show you one slide of, we launched a thing called home delivery. And in doing the home delivery, we basically gave people an opportunity to shop in our shops whilst the airport was closed, and before the reopening of the airport. And we were able to do this, and we were able to do it quickly, mainly because we had all the elements in place, prior to the COVID crisis in terms of the platform. And the home delivery business has done well for us. We have processed more than 10,000 orders. There are, the main categories that we are selling on it is, fashion, beauty, technology and food. And we got some resistance, from some of the brands, when we started this process. Some of them are still resisting, but we keep pushing ahead, in terms of using this platform and giving us, an opportunity to sell to people who are not traveling for a variety of reasons. And it has been very successful for us. But what I want to emphasize really is that that in order to do these things, and in order to, build your online presence, the work ideally should have been done prior to the crisis. And we were fortunate that before the crisis, we started doing the work. And I'll show you one graph, which tells you, what the share of the online business has been in comparison to our total business. So when we say online, we include the home delivery, we include the final surprise and the millionaire. And as you can see from this graph, in April and May, when the shops were closed, it was nearly all of our business. And now in August, September, it is closer to 10%. So I think moving forward, the online business will continue to be important. We continue to engage with our customers. We need to continue to develop our customer database and continue to pay attention to this part of the technology and then see how things evolve. The click and collect business that we have, that is still there, but the click and collect business, obviously, the volumes on that is a function of the number of passengers who go through the shop. So once the passenger numbers increase, we might see some more uptake on that, and we'll continue to invest in our home delivery business and continue to invest on our digital platform in social media advertising and all the other things that we need to do.
Thank you, Ramesh. And the same question for Tanya there, please, in terms of your social media, but also your kind of whole omni-channel strategy in terms of home delivery or click and collect. How does it work for Schiphol?
Well, the same as Ramesh just told us is luckily we were already investing in a lot of our online presence, and not only the online possibilities of pre-ordering, but the most important thing is to know where the customer is and to make sure that you communicate all your retail food and beverage offers to them when they want to have their information. So we use, of course, the WeChat channel. We use our own app and Schiphol environments. But we try to have all the different insights in where and when our passenger needs the information, because it's more about trying to catch them when they need the information and want to be supported. Because I don't really think that as an airport we should go online and sell our products on a website, because I think that most of our passengers will go to other websites first. But they do want to have the information when they go on a journey. And that's what's so important. We have to be part of the total ecosystem of the journey of each and every passenger. We need to be on top of what's happening, what are our business partners doing, what are third parties doing, and make sure that we are also part of that total system, the total journey, not even when they are already knowing that they're traveling via Schiphol Airport. We have to be part of their journey when possible. That's the most important thing. And besides it, of course, when passengers want to order or pre-order our articles or want to pre-order food to take on board into an airline, we also have to provide that service. So they can pre-order. They can pre-order if it's, for example, they can even pre-order via, for example, WeChat, but also pre-order via our own web and app. But also they can pre-order when they are at the airport. So if a passenger want to order or pre-order at our airport, we have to be sure that we have that service available. But on the other hand, it's most about communication on social media. Make sure that they know that we understand what they're asking for, what their wishes for, and how we can provide that service. And that's what we're doing most of the time.
Of course. Thank you very much, Tanya. I could see Simon nodding his head at various points during when Ramesh and Tanya were both speaking. I know that with e-commerce in general, there's been some interesting changes happening in terms of who's buying what. And I understand that grocery shopping, obviously, home delivery has gone up extraordinary amounts in popularity, and that in itself is having an effect on other buying behaviors on the internet. So if you could give us some more information on that, Simon, that would be great.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting seeing which categories have grown. I think some of them are some of them are fairly predictable, I suppose, with people being stuck at home and being either scared to go out to the shops or not being able to go out to the shops for whatever reason. We've seen that huge increase in grocery that you mentioned. So once again, let me share a bit of my screen here, and hopefully you can see just what we're talking about when we're looking at these different categories. So this was the data that we had back in April in terms of the increase in e-commerce interest, if you like. So the categories that people were most likely to go chasing after. Really interesting to see the household items being at the top of that list, because as you mentioned, when we start to see people spending more time shopping for their weekly groceries, that tends to have a knock-on impact on broader e-commerce behaviors as well. And the reason for that is the frequency with which people go in to buy their groceries. If you think about buying an expensive item like a new camera or something that people might go onto e-commerce to buy, typically that's once every couple of years, whereas buying your groceries for many people is at least once every couple of weeks, if not every week, and sometimes multiple times a week as well. So that sudden increase in frequency has resulted in an increase in familiarity and also therefore an increase in confidence when it comes to e-commerce. So while we're seeing an immediate benefit there in the sort of the purchasing of grocery items, that should have an overall benefit in terms of the different categories that people are buying. And in fact, I do have some data here that shows this is actual e-commerce transactions up until, I believe this was to the middle of July here, in terms of comparing transaction volumes to pre-COVID levels. As you can see, some really interesting categories coming through strongly here. So sports equipment, lots of people working out at home, but retail tech, so the kinds of technology that we use around the home, whether it's TVs or DVD players, whatever else it may be, things like that. But a lot of the things that especially duty-free retailers would be interested in as well. So cosmetics in there, alcohol came through in some of the other studies as well. So a variety of different things that people are definitely more comfortable buying now compared to what they would have done previously. Now, I'm guessing a few people will be asking the question, what do these trends look like over time? This is just general e-commerce transactions that you can see on this slide here. And you'll notice there is a downward sort of slope there compared to the sort of pandemic height, if you like, in mid to late April, but we're still seeing levels at 20 to 25% above the levels that we would have seen prior to COVID. So some huge increases in overall use of e-commerce, but in particular, some of those categories that I think a lot of your retailers will be most interested in digging into in a little bit more detail.
Certainly, and interesting, the more time they obviously spend on the internet, there's every chance that they can be spending more time looking for flights, researching holidays. This is what we're all hoping for at the moment, obviously. So, you know, just because they're in the past, I guess, travel retail may have looked at the increase in usage of devices, for instance, as a bad thing because they're distracted from the shopping environment. You know, we've sort of looked at that as a negative for many years until we decided we can't fight that any longer and we have to embrace it. So, you know, whereas devices may have looked like the enemy before, they now are going to be crucial and integral to the new retail environment. Now, in terms of moving back to more the kind of bricks and mortar business and particularly airports, as Ramesh and Tanya are obviously very much entrenched in terms of the changing landscape, we've all had to sort of change the way in which we work, and that includes the partnership model and the collaboration with, you know, with all our partners, with all stakeholders. That's had to adapt to these very severe conditions. And in some respects, I think through the conversations I've had with other operators is the fact that that's actually been some good to come out of this scenario, in the fact that there has been closer collaboration. Yes, it's not always been easy in this time, and some of those negotiations have been quite challenging, but there have been overall, it seems like there's been a more of a collaborative approach. Would you be able to say that, Ramesh, you know, from your perspective, would you say that the sort of silver lining is that there seems to be an important seismic shift happening in terms of how the sort of various the partnership model worked in the past?
I think that's an interesting question, Charlotte. When we look at partners, if we think of Dubai Airport as a partner, the COVID crisis, definitely has helped us to work much closer together. The amount of conversations that we're having at Dubai Airport in terms of passenger data, in terms of engagement with the passengers, in terms of plans, sizing the operation, all the flight information, all of that stuff, everything that you need to succeed in a retail business, at an airport. That collaboration has been fantastic, and for at the level of Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Paul Griffiths at Dubai Airport, and at each level, below, with all the teams, the collaboration has been extremely good. And as partners, I would say that Dubai airports have been a fantastic partner for Dubai Duty Free. On the supplier side, I'm going to tell Sharon and the team in purchasing to stop using the word partners with suppliers, and basically, say to them that the crisis, the one thing that it has shown is that, with many of the brands, I'm not saying with all the brands, with many of the brands who supplied goods to us, when the crisis happened, and subsequently the level of, let's say, support and the level of assistance that they have provided us has not been extraordinary. That is the politest, thing that I can say. So next time that a supplier walks into our office and says that we are partners, I would question that, depending on how they behaved, during the last 6 months. So I think, our situation is slightly different, and Tanya might have different views, in terms of how the airport, handled the concessions and the people operating the retail business. But definitely on the airport side, I think, there's been a marked amount of engagement, but on the supplier side, I'm not so sure. I think, in an overall sense, the crisis has been, a very, very significant hit to our operations and to the operations of our suppliers. And each of us are trying to figure out how much to help, how to help, when to help, and how to ensure that all of us are there on the other side, whenever the crisis finishes.
I think you bring up some really important points there. I was obviously being too diplomatic, but thank you for being characteristically undiplomatic. Obviously not mentioning any names there, but indeed we've heard from many suppliers, from the suppliers' perspective, that they have struggled to perhaps get the transparency they're looking for in this period of time. That they've said that some of their direct contacts in terms of buyers have been a little quieter than normal, or they've not had the same kind of conversations that they did do previously. So coming from their perspective, I think it's important to sort of give them a voice here as well. But and again, as you say, you have a unique situation with Dubai Airport, where obviously you are so closely interconnected that the relationship has always been as such, and the formation of that partnership is unique to Dubai. Obviously, Tanya will have a different perspective over in Schiphol, and I'd like to come to you and ask how you've been able to kind of work with your partners and how that's working. And again, Ramesh has highlighted that it's not been easy.
Well, of course, we are, as Ramesh said, from a different point of view. We can stay a little bit away from all the issues between suppliers and travel retailers. But of course, it's not totally out of sight. But I think we should look at how we work with our business partners. And a lot of business partners at Schiphol Airport are already our business partners since over 50 years. So that's also something that really helps us going forward, because they know our airport. They have seen crises at our airport already many, many times, not as long as severe as this one. But we work together in different crises, so we know how to find each other. We were already in a close collaboration before, and this helps us through this crisis. And of course, we want to help. They need help financially as well, and that's difficult because we as an airport also have a lack of means to support them. We do support them where possible, and we have the luck that our government is very much willing to help each and every company within the Netherlands. So they do have support from the government as well. But that doesn't mean that we aren't sometimes on different discussions, because of course some business partners like to have more support from us as an airport, also because the government is our shareholder as well. And on the other hand, also we see what Ramesh was telling about the squeeze between travel retailers, suppliers. Everybody is struggling for the same money, and margins are very, very low. So we see a lot of things moving, and we see things moving around us. So without putting travel retailers, suppliers, and the airport in a direct communication, because we also see third parties making use of the whole online spectrum, which is more and more open to for our passengers, and they know their way better than 6 months ago. So more parties are trying to be part of this total system. And we as an airport, the only thing that we found very much important is that we care for our passengers, first of all. And secondly, we are very keen on what's happening in that ecosystem, what's happening where, and where should we be part of. And try to do that as much as possible together with all our business partners. But to be keen on it, because I think we can't hardly see which company is doing what in this total journey and which part of this pie they try to collect. So we have to stick together, be open and as transparent as possible, to make sure that how we have the pie divided today is most of the pie which stick to the same players tomorrow. And that's not totally sure, I think, going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective, and I understand that the margin conversation can be brought up again and again. It will be, and I think it's obviously an important conversation to have. And we will indeed probably be talking about that much more as the week goes on, and when we have our product category webinars with mindset and IIR data presentations during those. So I'm sure we'll hear some of their reaction maybe to your points here, and how we can move forward. In terms of moving back to bringing Simon back into the conversation, I wanted to ask you how, in terms of, rather than just the sort of shopping habits and where people are sort of spending their time on the internet, are you able to do any, or have you done any research into what people are searching for at this moment in time? Obviously, we're going to keep it fairly PC at this moment in time, but in terms of kind of what they're most concerned about, or what they're sort of interested in searching for, if you've got some information on that, I think that would be interesting to share.
Yeah, so back at the beginning of the outbreak, we did see a huge increase in searches around health activities. COVID became the #1 global trend, even more than Google. Ironically, Google tends to be the most searched for thing in the world because people mistype google.com into their browser and the browser treats it like a search result. So Google, ironically, is the most Googled thing in the world. Beyond that, though, as time went on, what was quite interesting is that the COVID thing peaked very quickly and then started to come down. And we've already gone back to the same sorts of searches that we would have expected previously. So things like the weather, things like Facebook and social media activities, and the kinds of entertainment that people want to watch. So from that perspective, I think certain aspects of people's daily lives have gone back to not normal, but they're craving a little bit more of that day-to-day stuff that they used to. So I think the anxiety stuff was certainly there at the beginning. I'm hoping that the indications we're seeing from searches, that's passed a little bit. We are starting to see some positive searches around things like travel again, which is encouraging. Obviously, the transactions are still below where they were, but we are seeing people spending quite a lot of time planning, especially big purchases, whether that's travel or large appliances or cars and things like that. So searches for those things have increased, and we're seeing people sort of planning out those purchases a little bit more perhaps than they would have done previously, when they would have gone into stores and touched and felt things. I think now they're spending a lot more of that time that they're spending at home researching these products that they're craving for and they can't quite possibly go and enjoy today, especially travel being one of those. So I think that's quite an interesting one. When we're actually looking at where people are spending time, so moving from their searches into the websites and stuff that they visit, what has been quite interesting at a global level is the rise of more Asian brands within that. So we're seeing quite a lot of Chinese, in particular, e-commerce brands becoming part of the global conversation. I think from a retailer perspective, this is really interesting because with the rise of platforms like Taobao, Tmall, and all of these kind of Eastern, if you like, e-commerce brands, we are going to see a change in expectations in the way that the shopping experience unfolds online. If you compare things like Taobao to Amazon, for example, very, very different kinds of experiences. So that's one of the things that we've been tracking in both searches and in terms of traffic. I think for the guys that are watching today, one of the things to keep your eye on just in in terms of as you evolved your digital services over time, what does that rise of the East, if you like, mean for you as a business and how you conduct that online?
That's interesting, Simon. I don't know, Ramesh, are you able to shed some light on that? Are you finding that there's are you tracking the popularity of some brands over others, or sort of brands from certain regions of the world? Are you noticing that that's happening at the moment, and are you able to capitalize on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point, Simon. And we find that the most searched brands are typically the fashion brands, and the perfumes and cosmetics brands. I don't want to name them, but all of us know the big brands. And we also saw that when we launched our home delivery site, and in a sort of peculiar way, you find out that with things like home delivery and with things like all the restrictions that brands place in terms of what you can sell in the domestic market and what you can't and so on, that you have this perverse situation where you're not able to actually sell what the customer is searching for. But what they search for typically is fashion, it's perfumes, it's cosmetics, alcohol. We don't do any home delivery of alcohol because of the local regulations, but that is one of the things that gets searched a lot. So it's fairly similar to what Simon was saying in terms of what we are experiencing with the home delivery business.
Great, thank you. Michael, can I come to you and I'll see if there's any questions from the audience that we can put to some of our panelists?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Charlotte. Before I do put the first to the panel, I'd just like to say that some people are actually asking their questions as anonymous. I just want to reassure you all that nobody can see your questions apart from us, the moderators. So don't worry, you can put your name on the questions and we won't tell anybody who it's from if you don't wish to, but do let us know who you are, please. Any technical support issues, please just send an email to Travel Retail Marketplace at bluedogproductions.co.uk if anybody's having technical issues. There was one comment on that. So firstly, coming back to the partnership question, Tanya, there's Anonymous is asking whether you mentioned that there's been obviously a change in behavior, passenger behavior, and obviously that's meaning that you're changing your strategy as well with regards to e-commerce and m-commerce. In terms of the partnership, are you able to share this information with your retail partners, F&B partners as well, so they can also benefit from this new data, this new changing behavior among passengers?
Yes, of course. If it's anonymous information, of course, because we all have regulations on data, but of course we share our data, and even it's data from our business partners themselves as well. So it's vice versa. And the only way going forward, of course, looking at, we have a lot of regulations in Europe and Holland, especially on, and then Schiphol Airport is also on top of it, looking through our regulations on data. But besides that, we share as much as possible because that's the only way forward. The data is the only way how we can service our passengers, how we can make sure that we know what they're asking for and how we can provide the service they're asking for. So of course we share what we can, and it's vice versa, luckily. So we make use of not only the data from, for example, Hames Host, who is having a lot of data not only at Schiphol Airport but also international, and the way that passengers behave in other airports, of new wishes they have in other airports, can come to the Netherlands very easily, of course. So we learn from each other on a daily basis at the moment, and try to be flexible on how to react on it and react quickly.
Thanks, Tanya. And you mentioned it vice versa. There's a reciprocity of the data sharing. Do you see that across all stakeholders, including suppliers and airlines as well?
No, it's not that easy, unluckily. There are still some companies who say that it's our passenger, and I think there's nothing but it's our passenger. The passengers of nobody, the customers of nobody. I think the customers are from themselves, and they have so many areas, so many platforms to choose of. So the longer we think of having a owned customer, the longer it takes to have the right answer to what's happening in the world around us. And I think we should open up and make sure that it's the customers who is in charge, and we have to be supportive to them in order to remain part of their journey going forward.
Yeah, there have been many critics of the partnership model in the industry, that people have just been paying lip service to the partnership model, but really it's not been happening as it should have been. Do you see COVID and the current pandemic as a catalyst to greater data sharing and greater partnership?
Yeah, I think that it's crucial. I don't. Also, in my hometown, I see so many packages of online deliveries I haven't seen them ever before, and will remain the same. So people change their behavior. So we have to change as well, and very quickly. And we already had to, but I think that the world is now helping us to change the model. And I think, but it's scary, of course, because until now, there were other situations, other crises, changing of behavior sometimes, but in little steps, which could move our model a little bit. But now the model itself is being hit, and the model itself has to be reset. And that's scary for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. So it will be a step-by-step process, which is logical, but we have to open up, and we really have to reconsider the current model.
Thanks, Tanya. And Ramesh, if we can put that question to you as well. Obviously, you're in a different scenario with ownership of the airline and the airport, and you as the retailer under kind of one umbrella. But do you see a need for greater partnership as well in Dubai and in the industry?
No, absolutely. I think Tanya is very right in that, the shock to the system has definitely forced us to question many of our assumptions. It has gotten people to move from well-set positions before, so there's a greater willingness in terms of wanting to cooperate and help with each other. So I think it's absolutely undeniable. And the true test, I think, Michael, will be seen maybe in a year from now, and when we look back, in the middle of next year, and we ask ourselves, how did we all do? Were people really partners, or were they just transactional? Did models really change? There is also inertia, and there's also always the desire to go back to doing things as we were doing before, So there's no guarantee that this crisis will bring about fundamental change, but definitely some elements of the model, like fixed, guarantees, minimum annual guarantee, and so on. It's hard to see how many of those elements can survive this crisis. And I think, definitely that you would see bigger changes, because there is no other way at this point in time. Maybe when the traffic comes back to 2019 levels in 2024, or whenever, IATA thinks that it will come back, maybe things will go back to something else. But I think for the next 18 to 24 months, at least, you will see, change in many of these models.
I'm sure you'd like to hear Tanya's opinion on what you just said. Tanya?
Yeah, well, I think well, at Schiphol Airport, we don't have that much of a minimum annual guarantee, but I think it's, of course, from the travel retailer point of view, that's the most important model to change. And we are from the airport point of view, I think we can also look at that differently. I think it's on each and every level of the total system. And I think the system is about, you have different players. You have the travel retailers, you have the brands, you have the airport, and you have the airlines, and more players come into the system. So it's not only about the system between the travel retailer and the airport. It's also all the other people, all the other businesses who are involved in this total system. If you look, for example, to the brands, we as an airport, as I just said, we have collaboration with business partners for over 50 years, and we don't have the intention to change such collaboration. On the other hand, some brands want to go direct to a direct partnership with the airport, not because they want to outplace the travel retailer, but they want to be in charge of their own customer journey. They want to be more involved and more in their orchestrator role of their whole journey, and want to be close to their own customers or not own customers, to the customers they are trying to let them buy their products. So they want to be more in the system. And of course, there's also talk about margin, because they're looking for more margin. They're looking for being more in control of their own customer journey, of their own product, how it's being showroomed, how it's being sold, how it's being supplied. So what we also see happening is that brands are moving up to different airports, going directly where they were using travel retailers before. And although I think that a lot of brands probably don't know how difficult it is to work directly on an airport, and they need probably travel retailers going forward, and that's why it will remain a model. But I think more things is going to change besides only the contractual agreements between airports and travel retailers.
Thanks, Tanya. Simon, a question from the audience for you. Again, anonymous, I'm afraid. For a retailer or an airport who has not really invested heavily into their online presence and e-commerce, what kind of, from a blank sheet of paper, advice would you give to a retailer or an airport who really needs to invest now heavily into an online presence, given the current behavioral change?
What a question to start with. I think understanding the landscape is critical. Fortunately, this is not a sales pitch, so all of the reports that we produce we make available for free. So if you're not sure what the landscape in your particular market looks like, then we will have links for all of you to dive into that. I think understanding the demographics, the kinds of things that people are buying online, just broadly what they're doing online as well, I think it is really, really important. So Charlotte alluded at the beginning to the fact that we're seeing different age groups coming online. Knowing that we've actually seen a dramatic increase in the number of older people that are buying things online since the start of COVID is a really important start. So I think looking at the kind of customer that you're aiming for must be the start of everything we do, whether it's offline, online, or whatever else. Who is the person that you're trying to serve? What's the benefit? What's the outcome that they're looking for? Once you've identified those two things, everything else becomes relatively straightforward, in the sense that you're just looking for a digital channel or series of channels that can make it more efficient and effective for you to deliver that outcome to that audience. Now, I think Tanya made some great points about this idea of the customer journey, and I mean the shopping journey rather than the travel journey here. I think that's absolutely critical. You've got not just digital channels that will influence what people do on digital, and obviously vice versa as well. The things that we do online will influence what we do offline. So I would suggest that it's not just a question of getting your e-commerce stuff in place. That's a big opportunity. But in reality, my suspicion is that, especially when it comes to travel retail, the in-store experience is always going to be a very important part of the reasons why people buy when they travel. So if anything, it's going to be a great hybrid mix, but I would be very surprised if the offline world takes over the online one in a travel retail world anytime soon. So if you're just starting out, if you're looking at how you can take advantage of these digital opportunities, I would take Tanya's advice on that one. Start looking at how you can use digital channels to influence people earlier in their journey, whether that is introducing new brands to them, introducing the options that you make available to them. So just general promotion stuff to start with. It's also relatively straightforward now to get partners, I'll use that word in the digital sense, to help you with your e-commerce activities. So if you are an individual retailer, or even if you're a conglomerate of retailers, there are plenty of service providers out there that will do a lot of the hard work for you. Obviously, you've got to invest a bit of money to do that, but a lot of the time you just need to decide that you're going to do it and then find the partners that will help you to bring that to life. So have your vision, have your target audience, have your outcomes in mind. And from there, I think a lot of the stuff that you're worrying about will hopefully start to resolve itself.
Thanks, Simon. Charlotte, just one more question from the audience I want to put to Ramesh, if I may. Ramesh, somebody was asking, you mentioned earlier about the penetration rate and the spend per passenger being obviously significantly higher than this time last year. You mentioned also that the interaction levels have been much greater given the ratio from staff to customer, and that's actually quite coherent with the data. Mindset are our partners, research partners throughout the Marketplace webinars, and their research shows that the interaction is a huge trigger for the actual sale itself. But other than the interaction, how else could you explain this increased? Are you saying it's just on the interaction, or are there other elements there that are leading to this increased penetration, but also in particular the sales? Thanks.
I think, Michael, the one big factor which is very hard to sort of parse out, from the data, is the fact that many of the flights that have gone out in June, July, August, and September have been what we call repatriation flights, of citizens, getting back to their home country, who have been locked in or locked out, of wherever they are from. So people, repatriate because they've lost jobs, or people repatriate because, they were in a different place, when the crisis started and want to get back home, or whatever be the reasons. So with India, for example, we have no commercially scheduled flights at the moment. All the flights, that are going to India are all repatriation flights, to take Indian citizens back to their home country. So we feel that anecdotally, that when you have this kind of repatriation flights, people don't know when they are going to come back to Dubai again, when they're going to come to Dubai duty free, when they're going to come to Dubai airport. And there is, that aspect, that they're going back home without knowing when they might come back. And they might be going into quarantine, they might be going into self-isolation, or, whatever happens to you at the other end. So the combination of these two things and the pent-up demand, because there were no flights in April, May, June, until the beginning of June, when the duty-free was reopened, there was no opportunity, to buy stuff. So I think it's a combination of all of these things, and that's why we believe that we shouldn't extrapolate from what we saw in June, July, August in terms of penetration and spend per passenger, and we should be conservative. So in terms of our working, our working basis is that in the first half of next year, that the spend per passenger, we think, would be about 10% lower than what it was in 2019, to account for the economic crisis, to account for the, the lower income levels, job losses, and so on. And we think optimistically that in the second half of next year, the spend per passenger might come back to last year's levels. But this particular situation now is really clouded by repatriation flights, and I wouldn't want to bet that it will continue.
Okay, thanks very much, Ramesh. Charlotte, back to you.
I think we've covered an enormous amount of ground over this session so far. The one thing that I don't think we've touched on at all, actually, in fact, yet, is sustainability, which is obviously as well as coronavirus has been another really kind of hot topic and a top priority for all of us, I think, in the travel industry. And I think that we're all acutely aware of how travelers and consumers are demanding more from the aviation industry and travel retail in general. Their expectations are just as high of the high street, and so I think the industry has been doing globally a pretty good job of starting to change in this way, and sort of introducing more green procedures, or communicating their sort of more environmentally friendly status. And I know in terms of airports, certainly there's been a lot of work going on with ACI to sort of communicate all of this to travelers. Tanya, could you shed some light on this? And I know Schiphol is obviously very much aware of this too, and has been doing some great work from a sustainability perspective.
Well, yeah, thank you, Charlotte. I think it was one of the points which I think it's very important to talk over these days, because in the end, first of all, luckily our CEO is communicating. It's on the balancing act way. We of course are an airport. We of course, like a lot of people going everywhere in the world, we like to have as much passengers as possible. And the other hand, we have to do it in a close balancing situation with our environment. And this is something that Schiphol is urging for on almost a daily basis. We are investing as an airport also in new fuel possibilities. We are investing in possibilities how to travel within Europe without flying. So we have a lot of conversations on governmental and airline levels because we want to take a very strong position there. And we think it's only possible to grow in the future if you do it on on a sustainable way. That's the only way. And that's on the bigger picture. Of course, on the smaller picture, we can do a lot of things on PET bottles, on PETs, but also on the way we have contracts with business partners. Even we have an example of one of the new concepts we have in the coffee corner. We put, of course, in our contracts that you have to be sure where your coffee comes from if you want to be a partner at our airport. That wasn't in the contract a few years ago. It is now. And that even moves, luckily, it even moves companies to do it differently. We had one of the tender participants who are now rethought and redesigned their whole system of their company, the whole supply chain, because they weren't able to provide it. But because it was part of our tender process, they changed their design, not only for us, but in general. And whether or not they are part of the new coffee corner at Schiphol Airport, they changed their system. And I think we have the possibility to move things. We have the possibility to make sure that we do it in a more sustainable way. And we want to make sure that if a passenger comes to Schiphol Airport, they know where our food is coming from, how it's being produced, where the ingredients come from, how we can make sure that the ingredients don't always come from far away, but close to home. And I think that's all that kind of difference. Also waste management, of course, how you do it right, how you make sure you have as less waste as possible, and if it's waste, then at least you can be reused for other things. So I think this subject should be involved in each and every conversation we have on whether it's on retail, whether it's on food and beverage, whether it's on models, whether it's on tenders. Well, that's how we look at it.
Thank you very much, Tanya. You will obviously be well aware that TR Business and Duty Free Innovation, we founded the Travel Retail Sustainability Forum not long ago now, and we've certainly seen a lot of interest and appetite for businesses to share their best business practices and learn things from each other. So we know that firsthand, of course, and the Travel Retail Awards, which is happening digitally tomorrow at 11 a.m. UK time, UTC +1. We have introduced a new award, Best Green Initiative at an airport. So again, yeah, we're doing our part as well, and we're trying to have use our influence on the industry to make changes. Ramesh, could you also make some comments in terms of Dubai Duty Free's perspective on sustainability and how it's able to sort of improve its procedures?
For us, Charlotte, we've been fortunate that, we had a corporate responsibility function, in Dubai Duty Free, for many years. And Bernard looks after it as part of his overall, portfolio. And over the years, we have invested in terms of recycling, in terms of reusing, when it comes to things like waste management, reduction of the use of plastic. We have worked closely with the airport in terms of trying to get rid of single-use, plastic bottles, at least minimize the use of single-use plastic bottles, and a variety of initiatives where we have either supported organizations or institutions, that are working towards sustainability, or encouraging our employees to be more responsible and to be more aware of the impact that they are having on the environment. So as a retailer, we are essentially between the brand and the passengers, and we appreciate and acknowledge the work that the brands are putting in, whether it comes to packaging, whether it comes to, as Tanya mentioned, sourcing and all of those things. And we try and, do our own bit as individuals and as employees in pushing the agenda, especially in areas like plastic and waste and so on. So I think it has remained an important part, of our corporate objectives. In the current crisis, it's a time where the reduction in the use of many of these resources has happened in a natural way, But as the business picks up and as the economies start to come back to the pre-crisis levels, I think it's important for organizations like us to keep in mind that we need to operate in a sustainable fashion, and especially because travel retail sits at the heart of the aviation industry, and the aviation industry is going to be continuously under pressure in terms of sustainability. No, and people are continuously going to question the need for flights, the need to go, 8,000 miles, to do something and come back, and the carbon footprint, of the aviation industry itself, and the view which we don't necessarily share, that the travel retail business is selling stuff to people what they don't need, and many of it are indulgences that people buy. So I think as retailers, we need to be conscious of the larger conversation that is happening around sustainability, and yet continue to do our small part, in this process.
Thank you, Ramesh. And I also must alert you to the fact that we're holding our very first Travel Retail Sustainability Forum during this week. I believe is it Thursday, Michael? You might be able to help me out with the schedule here. Sorry, we have a comprehensive webinar program this week. I think we have 20 sessions, so it's quite difficult to remember when each of them are.
Yeah, it's going to be Thursday at 3 p.m. UK time. We've got a pretty comprehensive lineup for that session as well, with the mindset insights. We'll have input from brands perspective with Mars Wrigley and Distel. Obviously our partners with the Travel Retail Sustainability Forum, Duty Free Innovation. We've got Lagardère Travel Retail with Ambroise Fonder taking part. We'll have Concourse Display Management and Harding Retail as well. So quite a packed agenda during that session. And we'll look at all aspects of sustainability, including single-use plastic reduction, but other aspects as well for the travel retail sector. So 3 p.m. Thursday afternoon.
Hope to see you all there as well. And then we're coming, I believe, to a close now. We've only got a couple of minutes left. I think it would be good for myself to go around each of you and ask if you've got any kind of final thoughts that you want the industry to take away from, obviously this session, but obviously the TR Marketplace week as well. And also, if in addition to that, if you've got anything that you'd like to highlight that's been particularly insightful or interesting that you've heard during the session. So if you could sort of pick up on those 2 points, Tanya, I'll come to you first, sorry.
It's okay. Well, I think this, to start with, thanks for the session. I think that it's very helpful for the industry in total to have, we can't see each other in life. We have this possibility to exchange ideas and to make sure that we keep each other informed on every step that's being taken. Although I also have to say that we didn't come to that, but I feel a lot of collaboration also amongst the different, not only within our own business part, but also between airports, between other parties internationally. I think that we get much more questions from different airports, and we ask more questions than before, and we are all very willing to help each other out. So I think that's also something that we could mention, that it's a warm bath that we are all in, although it's a terrible time we all working in. And I think that, well, in line with what we, of course, as in our daily job as a leader in this business, I think it's very important towards your own people, but also towards the industry, to embrace change and to embrace the situation and to make sure that we are looking with an open and transparent view to what's happening around us, and listen to our business partners, listen to our employees, listen to everybody involved in this industry and outside the industry, because we need to listen a lot to really understand what is on everybody's mind. Where are they worried about? And whether it's our passenger or it's our business partner or it's the employees. So embracing change and listen, I think is very important going forward. So that's, I think, my add to the session.
Thank you. And Ramesh?
Charlotte, firstly, thank you very much, to TR Business for this opportunity to speak to everyone, and to hear, from Tanya and from Simon. I think it has been great. From our point of view, we have gone through different phases in this crisis. We had the shutdown phase, we had the reopening phase. Now we're in the phase of trying to understand, how the business will evolve in the next few months. And in each of these phases, a lot of people have made sacrifices. A lot of people have our employees have made sacrifices, our partners have made sacrifices. People's health has been at risk, and people have had to deal with the consequences of that. Rarely do you have an health crisis and an economic crisis at the same time. So we just want to thank everybody who has gone through this journey. And we want to say to everyone that the business is still there. The indications are that the travel retail business hasn't vanished, it hasn't died or anything like that. The fundamental parameters of the business are strong. And once the travel comes back, then I think the situation will improve for everyone. But we just need to hang in there, work with each other in the next few months, and be there, on the other side whenever this crisis comes to an end.
Thank you, Ramesh. And finally, Simon.
Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting takeaways for me from both Ramesh and Tanya there. I think the bit that really struck me was the idea that the individual spend has increased as a result of the activities over recent months. But I think to Ramesh's counsel, we may not be able to expect to see those changes endure. So a lot of what we're seeing at the moment is going to be a short-term bump that we're just going to have to get through. And hopefully the world goes back to an awful lot of the good stuff that we remember. But I think just looking at the data that we're seeing in people's digital behaviors, the one thing that I would say is unlikely to go back to the way it was before is the level to which digital is part of our overall everyday lives and the way that we go about buying things. So if you've been seeing an increase in the amount of digital involvement in the various aspects of your business, I would be very surprised if that dips back down to the levels we saw pre-COVID. So sure enough, some things will return, but digital, it looks like it's here to stay. So now is the good time to get involved and start building those plans out.
I think that's a very important point to leave on, because I know that's been a question on lots of companies' minds. If we invest now, will this be all for nothing in a few months' time? But according to yourself, and it comes to digital, that's not the case. And finally, I'd like to say thank you from myself to all of you for joining us, and thank you all, obviously, to the speakers. You've been absolutely brilliant over the course of this 90 minutes. And also thank you, Michael, of course, for helping us organise this session. It's been great for me. I've learned an awful lot as well. So that's thank you and goodbye from myself. Michael, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. And again, thanks to all for watching. Thanks to all our speakers. Great job, and great job you, Charlotte, as well. Been fantastic moderation all the way through. Really interesting to see how you've pieced it all together. The one thing takeout that I'd like to get everybody to focus on is that partnership model we talked about, because this will be a recurring theme throughout the webinars this week, and namely how COVID has been a catalyst to new forms of partnership, at least in the discussions that so far that we've had in preparation for this event. We'll leave you now. Coming up in half an hour, just under half an hour, at 11 a.m. UK time, is Strategies for the New Normal, Part 1 with Mark Taylor. I look forward to seeing you there and throughout the rest of the week. Have a fantastic travel retail marketplace, everybody. Bye-bye from us.
Bye-bye.
So simple, we just had